Welcome to Fearless Not Careerless. I'm Darren Mell. If you're stepping into the real world or trying to figure out how to move forward without losing your mind, this podcast is for you. I spent more than a decade hiring, training, and leading young professionals, and here's what I know. Talent matters. Work ethic matters. But emotional intelligence, integrity, and how you show up every day, that's what actually builds a career. Each week in under 12 minutes, we break down the real lessons that no one teaches you in school. Because being fearless doesn't mean being reckless. It means building something real. Let's get into it. Hey, how's it going? This is Darren Mell. Welcome back to another episode of the Fearless Not Careerless podcast. And I'm your host, Darren Mell, as I said. And the last episode we talked about brand a little bit. This one I entitled this episode, I'm really excited about this one. It's, Are You Down with P.D.P? And when I say P.D.P, I'm talking about personal development plans. Not the song by Naughty by Nature, Are You Down with OPP? I tie a lot of things back to music. I hope that you can handle it and enjoy it along the way. But what I wanted to talk about is why a personal development plan is the difference between drifting and driving your career. And I started this podcast, like I said, I wrote the book last year, the first and second one. The second one is specifically a deep dive on interviewing, and they're both called Fearless Not Careerless. And as like I said before, I'm a self-published author, but I wanted to get this information out to a broader audience because I'm, interacting with 100 to around 500 young professionals, but I know that's not the world. And what I'm here to offer you all is perspective on what I saw I didn't do and what I should have done. And you can take it for what it's worth and use bits and pieces that work best for you. But, let me ask you something like, when was the last time you scheduled time to work on yourself? We hear about people that they pay for a personal trainer and they get charged, if they miss this session, and that more people, they're likely to show up and stay honest and be there if you've got an appointment that you're going to be charged for. Now, this is different because you're not getting paid monetarily, but I've found, and it took me a while, because your calendar is really, it's all you have because people will fill it up otherwise. But blocking off time to put time into yourself, whatever it is that you personally want to develop, and that's why it's called a P.D.P. But, when you're talking about time to schedule work on you, not your boss's project, or in this case, maybe a university professor's project that they assign to you, not your team's deadline, not your inbox, but you. If you think about it, we spend 12 to 16 years in structured education on average. Then one day it stops. There's no more syllabus, no grades, no roadmap. And most of us, we just drift. So I have one question for you today. Are you down with P.D.P? Because if you're not building a personal development plan, you're living somebody else's. And, this is the truth about school. When I'm talking about a personal development plan, it's not a company development plan. It's not an annual review template. It's not something HR assigns you. It's your plan. Because here's the truth. School teaches you how to pass the tests, but it doesn't teach you how to build a life. And when you enter the working world, nobody hands you a growth strategy. So if you don't create one, you tend to stagnate. And I was guilty of that as well. When I finished my master's degree, I probably didn't pick up and read anything for well over 10 years. The post-school trap, and I think most of us fall into it, we obsess over getting the job. Then we forget how to grow once we have it. And then the daily grind slowly replaces intentional development, and years go by before we even realize that we haven't sharpened anything new. I neglected this for years after college. I thought showing up and working hard was enough. Turns out it isn't. Working hard without growing is just endurance. Think about it. Like, what skills have you intentionally developed over the last 12 months? If your job disappeared tomorrow, or the degree that you're working on, something changed and you weren't going to do it anymore, what new value have you built over that time? We always hear the world moves fast, technology moves faster, and if you're not upgrading yourself, you're likely depreciating. I guess I never thought about that. Ooh, personally depreciating, that sounds terrible. So we all have calendars, whatever you use to sort of track your day and what you're going to do, but you got to protect your calendar like it's gold. This is, if you already use a digital calendar, if you haven't, I highly recommend that you use one. If it's not blocked, it won't happen. And growth's got to be scheduled and not hoped for. For me, it's been reading. That's something that I've gotten into. Sometimes I just block off 30 minutes and I work remotely. So maybe just sitting at my desk. If that's my time that it's blocked off, I grab something and read. Because for me, I like a change in perspective. When I read something, it puts something into the front of my brain that stays with me for a while. It helps me to look at things differently. And that's, for me, I like that. But what do you like? Block off 30 to 60 minutes per week for personal development. And what you want that to be is up to you. Make it reoccurring, make it non-negotiable, and treat it like a client meeting. Think of it like hiring a personal trainer for your mind. And some of the things, examples, reading a book outside your role, a LinkedIn learning course, a YouTube deep dive, a mentoring call, expanding your network, reaching out to have a conversation with someone that's in your field that you don't even know, but to have a call with, listening to a podcast. Hey, that's a great idea. During your commute, I guess if you're doing this right now, you're already done with P.D.P, but you'll turn your car into a mobile classroom. When I was in early days an inside sales rep, I used to practice my pitch in my car. I had my windows tinted, or even if somebody could see in there, they probably just thought I was singing to a song. Your vehicle can be your university on wheels. If you think about this, someone who knows a little about a lot, that breadth creates a lot of opportunity. And I've always found, I've been in sales for years, and there's a lot of things that I've met with business owners about that it's not an interest of mine, but I try to know a little bit about it so you can I think you're just more of an interesting and more dynamic individual that way. When you talk about your personal brand and your authenticity, everyone's got a personal brand, which I talked about in a previous episode. And I'm guilty of this as well. When you're an early career professional, a lot of times you don't even have an idea of what your personal brand is, and that you rarely ask for feedback, and you also rarely reflect. The hard truth is that high school and college prepare you to follow instructions. They do not prepare you how to build a reputation. My parents said the same thing. Most parents say, work hard, pick something you love. That's well-wishing, but it's not a strategy. And that's where I think, the emotional intelligence and your self-awareness, the earlier that you can develop those skills, you're going to be more honest with yourself and even tell yourself, that's not my best work. What do people consistently compliment you on? What do people trust you for? And what words would your coworkers use to describe you? And that's what we're talking about, like your brand for your authentic self. Yeah, the corporate expectations exist, but professional standards matter as well. But authenticity is what really builds trust, and consistency is what builds credibility. And I feel, and again, I'd love to hear what you have to say in this community, is people don't follow polished. I think they follow real. And they can spot the polish a mile away. But unfortunately, those polished people, there's a lot of narcissism, and they don't even know that no one's paying attention to them anyway. I guess oblivious for some people works, but we're not going to talk about that on this podcast. There's, I call this fearless, not careerless. But if you think of it from this, fearless is you invest in yourself, you block time, you build skills, you seek feedback, and you try to grow intentionally. Careerless is you drift, you rely on job titles, you hope your company trains you, and you wake up 5 years later wondering, what happened? A job pays you, but a personal development plan positions you. And so I challenge you out there, young professionals, is that this week, block 30 minutes for personal development. Decide on one skill you want to improve and reach out to one person that you think is smarter than you in that area and ask for feedback from someone you trust. And I'll end with this. Ask yourself, are you down with P.D.P? Because growth doesn't happen accidentally. In my opinion, it happens intentionally. You don't need another degree. You don't need permission. You don't need a new job. You need a plan. And the most fearless thing you can do in your career is decide to keep evolving. And that's it for today. My name is Darren Mell, C-level leader and average human being. Thanks for listening. This has been the Fearless Not Careerless podcast with Darren Mell. Before you go, remember this. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to move forward with integrity, curiosity, and consistency. If this episode helped you, share it with someone who's building their career too. And if you want more practical insight on leadership, growth, and staying grounded while you rise, subscribe here on Substack, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, or anywhere podcasts are welcome. Until next time, be fearless, not careerless. See you next week.